Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, members of the public, council, and staff. Welcome to the September 21st Committee of Adjustment meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Lang, second by Councillor McDonnell. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Can I get an approval of the agenda as presented? Moved by Mayor Prevost, second by Councillor McDonnell. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Moving on to number 3, approval of the minutes of the September 8th meeting. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Lang, second by Councillor Jaworski. All those in favor? Carried. Are there any declaration of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 5, A 27-20. Grant, Ms. Haley.
Moving on to number 3, approval of the minutes of the September 8th meeting. I'm going to move in a seconder.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Lang, second by Councillor Jaworski. All those in favor?
Just going to share my screen. Okay, good evening, members of the public. Welcome to our Committee of Adjustment meeting this evening. For members of the public that are participating by Zoom or by phone, you will be permitted to speak to the respective application following my presentation. Prior to speaking, please state your name and address for the record. For those of you participating by Zoom, to make a comment, please use the raise hand function and the chair will call on you. If you have registered to participate in the meeting by phone to speak to your application, you will be asked if you would like to comment on the application after the applicable presentation. I now need to read required wording under the Ontario Planning Act. This is the hearing under Section 44 of the Ontario Planning Act. Any person may attend this hearing and/or make written or verbal representation either in support of or in opposition to the proposed minor variance. If a person or public body does not make oral or written submissions at this hearing before the minor variance is decided upon, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the minor variance of the Committee of Adjustment to the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal, also known as LPAT. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a hearing or make written submissions to the Committee of Adjustment before the minor variance is decided upon, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the LPAT unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. So we're going to get started with application A2720. This property is located at part of Lot 45, Concession 2, north of the Raisin River, and it's specifically located at the corner of County Road 18 and Beaverbrook Road, fronting on County Road 18. In the geographic township of Charlottenburg, now in the township of South Glengarry. The purpose of the minor variance is the applicant proposes to construct a single detached dwelling that is undersized in a rural zone and therefore will not conform to the zoning bylaw. The following relief from the zoning bylaw 3809 is requested: to reduce the minimum gross floor area of the proposed single detached dwelling from 75 square meters or 807.3 square feet to 55 square meters, which is 592.03 square feet. The property is designated rural district in the county official plan. This application conforms to the general intent of the official plan, and the property is zoned rural and conforms to the general intent of the zoning bylaw. The application was circulated to applicable municipal staff as well as the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry. The Planning and Building Department have no concerns with this application. The United Counties of SDNG also has no issues with the requested variance, and they recently approved an entrance permit to be located on County Road 18. The applicant has also applied for a septic system, anticipating approval for the application this evening. I have not received any phone calls or any comments from the public to date. So if there's any questions from the committee, I'd be happy to answer them. And just to let you know, the property size is 6.93 acres. So there's lots of space on this property to accommodate the septic system in the dwelling, despite the dwelling being a smaller home.
Thank you very much, Ms. Haley. Are there any questions of the committee? Councillor Jaworski?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. My question for Ms. Haley, if they wanted, if this, on this property, if they wanted to take advantage of the opportunity to have a secondary dwelling, what would the secondary dwelling then have to be smaller than this
Yeah.
house too?
That could be possible, but it might be difficult because it would have to be smaller than the 592 square feet. But there's nothing saying that in the future, they could do an addition to this dwelling to make it larger. That would then allow for a secondary dwelling unit to be built at a smaller size at a later date.
Okay. And if I could have a supplemental, what's the rationale about having a minimum size today of 75 square meters?
That size has been in our zoning bylaw for many years. It's a common size in the province. You'll see 70 square meters or 75 square meters being a very common size. This is our first application, as you're probably aware, to reduce the gross floor area. And I would say it's just been a common number you'll find in most zoning bylaws.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other comments of the committee? Alrighty, can I get a motion to approve as presented? Moved by Mayor Prevost, second by Councillor Jaworski. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Oh, that's true. Thank you, Councillor McDonnell. Are there any questions of the public before? I'm sorry we voted on that, but this is our first time with this new technology, so bear with us. Okay,
So that's great, Mr. Chair. If you don't mind repeating your mover and a seconder, it just happened so quickly. I
Yep,
missed it. I
that's
apologize.
moved by Mayor Prevost, second by Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you.
All right, perfect. Moving on to number 6A 28-20, Brady, Ms. Haley.
I just need you to share my screen if you don't mind. I'll just reshare here. Thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, so A2720, or excuse me, A2820, I'll get to that, is located at part of Lot 49, Concession 3, north side of the Raisin River in the geographic township of Charlottenburg, now in South Glengarry, also known as 4890 Johnson Road or County Road 19. This is a location of the subject property. You can see it's south of Cloverdale Road on the west side of Johnson Road. The applicant and the property owner is a dog breeder for Australian Shepherds and wishes to increase the number of dogs on the subject property in order to also breed another breed of dogs, which their request is to board up to 25 dogs during the breeding cycles. The subject property does not operate as a boarding kennel that is open to the public. The purpose of the minor variance is to increase the number of dogs boarded at this existing site. And under the zoning bylaw, for a kennel, you do require a 300-meter separation distance from the kennel or the structure to the nearest dwelling located on another lot. And that dwelling happens to be 4926 Johnson Road. So the request is to reduce the minimum distance from 300 meters, which is 984.3 feet, to 169 meters, which is 554.46 feet. And here's an image that'll show you where the two locations are located. This is the subject property, and then the arrow heading to the south in red is pointing to the dwelling on the nearest lot located at 4926 Johnson Road. And as I mentioned, the distance between the two structures is 169 meters or 554.46 feet. I'm just going to give you an example of a definition of a kennel. So a lot of people think that a kennel is open to the public. That's a place where you're going to drop your dog off, have your dog boarded when you're on vacation or working or whatever it may be. But it can include a variety of things. So a kennel is lands, buildings, or structures where dogs, cats, birds, or other domestic animals, which is used to maintain, board, breed, or train domestic animals for personal or commercial purposes. The township has an animal control bylaw. Our bylaw was recently updated in 2020, and it requires all adult dogs to be licensed. Dogs under 3 months of age do not require to be licensed. So typically, when you do have breeders and if they have, a litter of puppies and if those puppies are sold, we don't require them to license the puppies. It would only be for the adult dogs. So a lot of times though, the owners will ask for additional licenses to be on the safe side if they have the dogs for a longer period of time, if they, haven't found a home for the dog, or if they're bringing in other dogs for breeding, whatever it may be. And so that's what happened was we received a request to increase the number of dogs for this existing property. The property is designated rural district in the official plan, and it conforms to the general intent of the official plan. And the property is zoned rural, and it does conform to the general intent of the zoning bylaw. To date, I received no formal or written comments from the public. I have received 2 phone calls from one person asking general questions about the current operation, requirements of the bylaw, etc. And the United Counties of SD&G was circulated on this application simply because it fronts on County Road 19. They had no concerns or comments with the requested variance. The manager of bylaw enforcement was involved in the process as well. She has no concerns with the requested variance. The current property owner has been breeding dogs since 2018, and we've received no formal or informal complaints regarding noise, dogs barking, etc. And our bylaw officer has also completed inspections of the subject property and has found no concerns with the property. And building and staff have no concerns with the requested variance.
Thank you very much, Ms. Haley. The property to the north of that proposed, is it within the 300-meter setback, or is it less than?
If you don't mind, Mr. Chair, I'll just take a look at.
Because it would be located adjacent on the south side of
presentation.
Cedar Grove or Cedardale Road. Cloverdale, sorry, Cloverdale.
If you don't mind, I'm just going to take a look at that property. I know when we did the review, it was not found to be the closest one. This was the one that was found to be the closer one of the 2. So as you can see, can you see my mouse moving?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So then you're talking about the one north of
Correct,
here?
right there. Is that within the 300-meter as well, or is it above, beyond the 300-meter setback?
From what we can tell, but it's based on the nearest dwelling. So we don't go and measure every parcel of property.
Okay.
We reduce it to the nearest dwelling, because if not, you'd have a variance that would be like 30 meters to 169 and 30 meters to, I don't know, 254. I'm just giving you examples of numbers. So that's why you
Yep.
always pick the shortest distance.
Yep.
And we did do the measuring to see which one was the shortest in order to be able to determine if a variance was required.
Okay.
But they are notified, by the way. And the reason why they're notified is because any property that falls within 60 meters of the subject property, so being there adjacent, they would be part of the process. So they would understand and be made aware that there is a kennel that's located in this location.
Okay. Councillor Jaworski, you have your.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Haley, my question is just if you could clarify, or perhaps I missed it. So they're asking for up to 25 dogs or animals, but they have up to how many today?
So I'm going to try and clarify something. The purpose of this evening is not to decide on the number of dogs, and I'll explain to you why. In the animal control bylaw, it states that we can license up to 15 dogs. However, if they want to go over 15 dogs, a request to council is required to allow them to go above the 15. In this particular case, this applicant wants 25. The request came into our office, and that triggered the review by our manager of bylaw enforcement when she was processing the request and looked at the 300-meter separation distance. That's what triggered the minor variance. So before the committee this evening is to reduce the separation distance from 300 to the 169 meters. It's not to approve the number of dogs. If the committee approves this application this evening, then the request would be brought to council at a subsequent meeting to then give staff permission to license more than 15 dogs. So I'm sorry if it's a little confusing. The reason why I put the number in is because when I did have the conversation with a member of the public on the phone, they were asking, what is the maximum number of dogs that could be on that site? So to be transparent, I thought it was important to explain the amount of dogs that could be on that site.
So is it fair to assume that today it's less than 15?
Yes.
Okay.
They are licensed today up to 15 animals. But, and then it's based on breeding cycles as well, right? So there isn't always 15 dogs on site.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Daly. Are there any comments of the public?
Hello.
Hello, is this Paul?
Yes.
Hi, Paul. Can you state your full name and your address and then go ahead with your
Paul.
comments, please?
Okay. It's Paul Richard. I'm at 4926 Johnson Road. Go ahead with my comments.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Joanne relayed to us the present intention of the kennel owners and the variance. I tried calling the owners on Thursday at about 7, and there was no answer nor answering machine. The variance, as written, would permit an increase to 25 dogs at about half the legal distance. And as written, the owner could change their present intentions. There is nothing stopping them from changing those intentions. There is no mention of purpose to breed, types or size of dogs, or any plans to control the sound levels, which studies show as problematic. We have no problem with dogs. We've owned 2 dogs, and since moving here 22 years ago, my daughter owns a dog, my son owns 2 dogs. We have 2 main concerns, is the potential noise problem and the potential loss in property sales value. First, the noise problem. The fact that there are studies related, readily available online related to noise problems from kennels confirms that there are problems. The studies substantiate that people who complain and must deal with that noise from kennels is justified. The law requiring a minimum 300 meters to the nearest home for 25 dogs is not arbitrary or uninformed. The couple at the end of Johnson Road, which is about 600 to 700 meters, say they can hear the barking from the kennel. Here are some data from noise studies. Keep in mind that 85 decibels is the level of noise that can be harmful. A power lawnmower is 80 to 89 decibels, motorcycles 96 to 100 decibels, chainsaws, leaf blowers, snow blowers, 106 to 115 decibels. A rock concert is about 120 decibels. Here's a sentence that comes from a study for guide dogs for the blind. The sentence reads, the overall sound levels for 24 dogs of various breeds range from 85 to 122 decibels. Another study from Purdue University Center for Animal Welfare Science, taken from a paragraph called Negative Impacts of High Noise Levels on People and Dogs. Sound levels ranging from 85 to 100 decibels are common in dog kennels. Exposure to these high levels of sound throughout the day put both animals and humans at risk for damage to their hearing and may result in decreased quality and quantity of sleep in dogs. I can add that night barking will also decrease sleep in humans. Our own experience is, although we have no intention to complain about the existing barking, we don't enjoy sitting on the front porch when the dogs are barking. The second issue is potential reduction in property sales value. I reached out to several realtors who confirmed that yes, it is likely that properties nearby will have a lower resale value when buyers have a concern for noise issues. Some potential buyers will not even consider a purchase. And the bottom line here is the cost to us is not only the loss of tranquility, but the negative home value tied to having a kennel next door. We understand our neighbors have a right to own dogs, but they must understand that surrounding neighbors have a right to normal sounds and duration. They also have a right to protect their home resale values and investment. So far, there are 5 homeowners within approximately 1 kilometer who are concerned about a possible increase in kennel noise. Also, 3 real estate agents have all agreed that there is a potential for decreased home resale values. The lists are available to the township if you want them. Now, there's some of the things that I saw on Joanne's presentation do not show up on the notice of public hearing. I may have been a little wiser, although Joanne did tell us a lot of this stuff is it's not clear that the breeding is their intention. In the way that it's worded is they could, if the breeding doesn't work for them, they could turn around and breed and board 25 dogs of any size or duration or whatever. So I think the wording in the public hearing notice that we got is off.
The application.
And the application is off. And so that's my, if the notice, let's say, were rewritten to incorporate the purpose and try to ease our concern for noise levels, I think we probably would not have a problem with that. But as it stands, it doesn't work for us and 5 other neighbors so far. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Paul, for those comments. Ms. Haley, did you want to rebut or?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you as well for your comments, and I'm going to explain why the notice is written the way it is. The zoning bylaw does not regulate the number of dogs. The township's animal control bylaw does. The purpose of the the purpose of the minor variance this evening is to reduce the required setback in the zoning bylaw from 300 meters to 169 meters. I'm not able to include the number of dogs in this notice because that's not the purpose of the request. I happen to know that the property owner is wanting to increase it to 25 because they need to bring that request to council. So if this is approved this evening by the committee, it'll be up to council to decide if they are going to allow the dogs to be at 25 on site. So I'm sorry if it appears to be misleading, but I assure you it's written properly for the variance for the purpose of the bylaw.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Haley. Are there any other comments from the public? Go ahead and state your name and your address, please.
Heather Brady, 4890 Johnson Road.
Go ahead, Ms. Brady.
I just wanted to comment that just one little thing that I have to say. You know, we take pride in what we're doing. We don't overbreed dogs. We keep the barking to a minimum. And I just wanted to confirm that our neighbors to the right I've confirmed with them, they've never heard any of the dogs bark. We are on top of that constantly just to be sure, like when you have young puppies that you're growing out for our breeding program, we want to make sure that they're disciplined, that they don't bark, because the last thing you need is, listening to that exactly when you're sitting on your porch or your balcony and trying to enjoy a quiet evening. However, there are other dogs in the area that we do hear barking. There's one on Doonan Road. There's one just up 2 neighbors down that has a dog that's out doesn't go in at night. is outside. So that dog barks. Sometimes, yes, I admit it will, and it would make our dogs bark. And there are the coyotes also in the field that my dogs will react to when they bark. So I just wanted to make sure that there was no, it's not always our dog. It could be the neighbor like on the left, could be the neighbor on the right. There are several dogs in the area, so I just don't want it to be pinpointed onto my dogs.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments, Ms. Brady. Okay, Ms. Haley, I have a question. So it says here that it's an existing kennel. Am I correct to assume that there was a license given to this property for a kennel in the past?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in 2018, the property owner was given dog tags for up to 15 dogs. And now we're dealing with a new animal control bylaw that was approved in 2020 by council, spring of this year. And so our bylaw officer was the one that implementing the new bylaw that required this to come before the Committee of Adjustment because of the reduction in setback. So yes, in 2018, they were permitted to have 15 licenses.
So there's kind of an inequity in one of those bylaws, because 15 is kind of excessive for a household in potentially Glen Walter area. Are they permitted more animals based on the zoning? Or is it just a standardized across the board, across the township? You can apply for 15 licenses per residence for a dog.
So you wouldn't be able to in Glen Walter because it's a residential property, so you're capped at 5. And then under the current bylaw, anything over 5 triggers a kennel license. Anything over 15 triggers approval from council. So that's the difference between the former and the new bylaw.
Okay, but I guess the question I'm trying to get to is, at what point did council approve these guys to have a kennel in the first place?
They didn't need to. It was based on licensing. In 2018, it was based on the number of licenses issued for the dogs.
So, okay, so shouldn't that be the other way around? Shouldn't someone have to apply for a kennel before they can get 15 licenses?
Yes, and that's what we're dealing with currently. So our new bylaw would require you to come in and apply for a kennel approval, and it would have to meet the 300-meter setback. So the bylaws are consistent now.
So, okay, so they have been changed.
Yes.
Okay,
But we are dealing with a situation where they were licensed previously in 2018.
fair enough.
Yes.
Okay,
And keep in mind too, when you deal with breeders, it's tricky sometimes for staff because you could have a breeder that may only own, let's say, 4 dogs, and they fit perfectly within the rules because they're under 5. They could bring in another dog as part of that breeding process for a short period of time, board, have that dog come and visit, and then the dog goes back home. And then puppies aren't required to be licensed if they're under 3 months of age. And my understanding, I'm not a breeder, but oftentimes they're sold, between the 8 and 12-week mark. So we're not dealing with licensing puppies all the time. So you potentially could have a parcel of property in South Glengarry, even in the residential area, that could have 4 dogs, and each of them 2 dogs have a litter, and you could have, up to 8 dogs per litter. And so for a period of time, you're dealing with a lot of dogs. So the bylaw today is written to kind of accommodate that, but yet be more in line with the zoning bylaw. So I apologize if it's very confusing.
no, thank you very much. You clarified all that. Yes, Councillor Jaworski?
Another point of clarification, please. So in the past, was there a setback? And are we changing the setback? And if this is not passed tonight, does that mean there's an effect on the number of dogs that they already have?
So the zoning bylaw always required 300-meter setback. Honestly, I can't answer your question because I don't have the previous animal control bylaw in front of me to know what would have triggered the setback. I apologize, I don't know that. What was the second part of your question? I'm
If
sorry?
this is not passed tonight, can it have an impact on the number of, like up to 15 that they have today?
No, so if the committee approves this, they're permitted to have the 15 because they were previously licensed under the 15. We won't take that away from them because of the previous bylaw.
Okay, thank you.
But if the committee does not approve it, they still remain with the 15 dogs?
Correct. And then they could have puppies, providing those puppies stay under 3 months of age. They do not need to be licensed. So
Okay.
at this point of time, the decision that is made this evening is whether you feel the reduction in the setback is something that can be approved or not. You know, is it considered to be in conformity with the planning policies? Is it minor in nature? And is it, you know, negatively impacting the abutting property owners? Those are your 4 tests that you're making your decision on this evening.
Okay. So that was very informative. Thank you for that. Are there any other questions from the public? There is, or comments? Yes. Go ahead and state your name and your address and go ahead with your comments, please.
Hi, this is Anna Richard. I'm at 4920 Johnson Road. I have a question. When you're seeing 25 dogs, do you mean 25 dogs that could each have 8 puppies? So then, because they're not licensed, it could be 50, 60, however many, I don't know how many of these types of dogs have at a time in their litter, but would it be 25 dogs at all times, licensed and unlicensed?
Thank you for your question, Ms. Haley.
Mr. Chair, it would be based on the number of dogs. So they could have 25 dogs, not including puppies.
So then it would be higher than 25 dogs. It would be 25 dogs plus 8 for every dog that's bred.
Depending on how many female dogs there are and how often they're bred, yes.
Yes, so the actual variance is not for 25 dogs because puppies bark just as much as adult dogs and puppies are not licensed, so they're not being calculated in the total number of dogs that would be at one time in that kennel.
So just to be clear, the variance is not about the number of dogs. The variance is about the reduction in setback.
But the necessity for the reduction in the setback is because of the number of dogs that it will be increased by. If they stayed at what they had now, it would be okay. But so it does take into account how many dogs, because if they weren't going to have more dogs, there would be no need for this variance.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments. Ms. Kramer, thank you. Are there any other comments of the public? Okay. So we have a minor variance application before us. And can I get a mover to approve or not approve and a seconder? Okay. Moved by Mayor Prevost to approve accept as presented. Can we get a seconder? Can I get somebody to move to not approve as presented? Because we could not get a seconder.
I'll move to deny.
Moved by Councillor McDonnell to not approve as presented. Can I get a seconder? Councillor Jaworski. All those in favor of not approving the application? The application has been denied. Ms. Haley, next meeting is at October 5th. Okay, perfect. So seeing as there's no other items on the agenda, can we move to adjournment to get into our council meeting? Moved by Councillor McDonnell, second by Councillor Lang. All those in favor? Meeting is adjourned at 7:07 p.m. Thank you very much. And we'll see you at the council meeting very soon.